What would you do if you walked into a room and came out decades later? It sounds impossible. Yet there are people alive today who swear this exact thing happened to them. We've uncovered 10 documented cases of alleged time travelers, complete with police reports, surveillance footage, and ancient artifacts that simply shouldn't exist. Some of these stories involve secret government programs. Others feature ordinary people who stumbled into something they couldn't explain. Each case is more mind-bending than the last. If you think you understand how time works, prepare to question everything you thought you knew. Number 10. The mysterious disappearance of Thomas Johnson. This case is one of the most haunting time travel stories ever documented. And once you hear it, you'll understand why researchers still debate it to this day. Imagine you're a teenager on a warm summer afternoon. The year is 1912. You're walking with friends to a nearby lake in rural Minnesota, planning to swim and enjoy the sunshine. Everything feels normal. Everything feels safe. And then, in the span of a few heartbeats, your entire world changes forever. Thomas Johnson was 15 years old when he vanished. According to old police records from the time, he was a cheerful boy, well-liked in his small town, with no troubles and no enemies. On that fateful June day, he joined 3 friends for a walk to the lake. The weather was perfect. The sky was clear. There was no warning of what was about to happen. His friends later gave statements to local authorities describing what they witnessed. As the boys approached the water, a strange wind suddenly picked up out of nowhere. The surface of the lake began to churn. In the center, the water started rotating, spinning faster and faster until it formed what looked like a massive whirlpool. Thomas laughed. He thought it was exciting, some kind of natural phenomenon worth investigating. Before anyone could stop him, he jumped into the rotating water to get a closer look, and then he was gone. No scream, no splash, no struggle. The whirlpool simply swallowed him whole, and within seconds, the water returned to its calm, glassy surface, as if nothing had ever happened. Search teams spent weeks combing the lake. Divers went down repeatedly. They found nothing. No body, no clothing, no trace whatsoever that Thomas Johnson had ever entered that water. The official conclusion was drowning. But privately, investigators were baffled. How could a body simply vanish without a trace in a small lake? His family mourned. Years passed. The world moved on. 2 world wars came and went. Technology advanced beyond imagination, and everyone who remembered Thomas Johnson eventually passed away themselves. Then, in 1970, 58 years after his disappearance, something impossible happened. A teenager appeared on the outskirts of town. He was barefoot, confused, and wearing clothes that looked like they belonged in a museum. When authorities approached him, he gave his name as Thomas Johnson. At first, everyone assumed he was mentally ill or pulling some kind of elaborate prank. But then investigators pulled out old photographs from 1912. The resemblance was undeniable. Same face, same build, same distinctive scar on his chin that Thomas had gotten from a childhood accident. For the entire world, 58 years had passed. For Thomas, it had been mere minutes. When questioned, Thomas described what he experienced. He said the water around him suddenly began to glow with an intense light. A strange humming sound filled his ears. Everything went black. When he opened his eyes again, he was standing on the shore of the same lake. But nothing looked familiar anymore. Cars he didn't recognize roared past on nearby roads. People wore strange clothing. Buildings had appeared where forests once stood. He had no idea where or when he was. Some researchers believe Thomas accidentally stumbled into what they call a time portal, an invisible passage that connects 2 different points in time. In this case, 1912 and 1970. Theoretical physicists have discussed the possibility of wormholes, tiny, unstable tunnels in the fabric of space-time that could theoretically allow travel between different moments. Others propose something called a time rip, a tear in reality itself where 2 timelines briefly overlap. Anyone standing in exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong moment could be flung from one era directly into another. Is it possible that certain locations on Earth don't follow the normal rules of time? Was that Minnesota lake hiding something extraordinary beneath its surface? The case of Thomas Johnson remains unsolved to this day. And trust me, that was only the beginning. The truly shocking cases are still ahead. Number 9. The man who walked into a shed and never came out. This next case is absolutely insane. And the most incredible part is that it was captured on surveillance cameras. Every second of it. Recorded and preserved for anyone to analyze. In April 2024, Alex Shaw was checking the security footage from his Florida property. Shaw ran an Airbnb business and had cameras positioned around the house, the driveway, and the backyard. One camera pointed directly at a small wooden storage shed he used for gardening tools. What he saw on that footage made his blood run cold. Early in the afternoon, a young man appeared on the property. He looked calm, purposeful, carrying a dark backpack and walking as if he knew exactly where he was going. Without hesitation, he walked straight to the shed, opened the door, and stepped inside. Shaw watched the footage in real time on his phone. He waited for the man to come back out. He never did. Minutes turned into hours. The shed door remained closed. Shaw called the police, convinced something terrible had happened. When officers arrived and finally opened the shed door, they found absolutely nothing inside. No man, no backpack, no signs of escape. The door had been locked from the inside, and the shed had no windows, no vents, no openings of any kind. It was physically impossible for anyone to have left that shed without being seen on camera. The police filed a report, but had no explanation. Shaw watched the footage dozens of times, looking for edits or glitches. He found none. The recording was continuous and unaltered. The young man simply walked in and vanished. Then, almost exactly 24 hours later, the camera captured something even stranger. The shed door slowly creaked open. An older man stepped out. He had gray hair, hollow cheeks, and moved with the careful slowness of someone well into their 60s or 70s. But his height was the same. His posture was identical. His facial structure matched the young man from the day before almost perfectly. It was as if the same person had aged 40 or 50 years overnight. Sharp-eyed viewers noticed one particularly puzzling detail. Both men wore glasses, but the older man's frames were completely different, thick and angular, resembling styles popular in the 1980s. If the young man had somehow traveled backward in time inside that shed, lived for decades in the past, and then returned to the present, it would explain both his aged appearance and his outdated eyewear. Another strange detail. The older man no longer carried a backpack. Some theorists believe that backpack contained something important, perhaps even a device that enabled the time travel itself. What exactly happened inside that shed? Did this man deliberately travel through time? And if so, how did he know that particular location would work? Some researchers believe that time travel, if possible at all, can only occur at very specific locations, places where magnetic fields align in unusual ways, where energy concentrations reach critical thresholds, or where so-called ley lines intersect. Perhaps that unremarkable shed in Florida sits on exactly such a spot. The investigation was eventually closed. No logical explanation was ever found. The footage remains authentic to this day. Before we continue, here's a quick question for you. If you could travel to any time period for just one day, which year would you choose? Write your answer in the comments below. We're genuinely curious what everyone picks. Number 8. The Secret Time Travel Program. This next case sounds like something straight from a science fiction movie. Yet the man who tells this story swears every word is true, and he has something remarkable to show as proof. A man whose face remains blurred and whose voice is electronically distorted claims he worked for a top-secret government program in the 1980s. The program was called Project Globus, and according to him, it operated from an underground research complex beneath London. Scientists from 3 nations collaborated there: the United States, Great Britain, Russia, all working together on technologies that were supposed to remain hidden from the public forever. The experiments they conducted sound almost unbelievable. Teleportation, hybrid biological entities, devices capable of moving matter across short distances. But the crown jewel of their research was something they called the Time Queen. The Time Queen was allegedly a machine capable of sending human beings through time itself. According to this man, the device was powered by a fragment of an asteroid, that emitted a previously unknown type of radiation. This energy was so powerful, it could theoretically destroy planets if it ever became uncontrolled. But the scientists at Project Globus learned how to harness it, converting the radiation into mathematical algorithms that could bend the barriers of time. The man claims he was part of an elite unit called Quantum. Their mission was to travel to 17th century China, secure historical artifacts, and collect what they called temporal data. But something went wrong. He got separated from his team. Soldiers from that era discovered him and gave chase. During his desperate escape, he lost something, a small modern Swiss ring watch he had been carrying. Centuries later, that exact watch was reportedly discovered inside the sealed tomb of an ancient Chinese soldier. The discovery made international headlines in 2008, when photographs of the tiny artifact circulated across the internet. People called it the Ming Watch, a modern object found in a place where it simply could not exist. Is this mysterious man actually telling the truth? Was he really part of a secret program that sent people through time? During his interview, he holds up a photograph showing himself holding a metallic ring. He calls it his team's identification device, forged from a material that existed only in their laboratory. The ring supposedly contained embedded technology that could activate time coordinates and serve as a safety anchor to pull travelers back in emergencies. Some researchers who have examined the photograph claim the ring contains unusual internal structures, thin lines or wires that suggest advanced technology. The man ends his testimony with words that have haunted viewers ever since. Many of us never came back. I was one of the ones they managed to bring home. Absolutely fascinating. But what you're about to hear next puts everything so far completely in the shadows. Number 7. The Visitor from the year 2029. This case is extraordinary because it allegedly happened during a scientific experiment, witnessed by multiple researchers who documented everything that occurred. Vadim Chernobrov was a Russian aerospace engineer who dedicated much of his career to investigating unexplained phenomena. In the 1990s, he led a project called Kosmopoloisk, which studied everything from UFO sightings to what he called time fields. But Chernobrov wasn't interested in theories alone. He wanted measurable evidence. He and his team constructed a machine consisting of multiple metal rings that rotated in opposite directions, generating a powerful electromagnetic field. Their hypothesis was that intense electromagnetic energy might be able to influence the passage of time, even if only slightly. The early experiments showed promising results. Clocks placed inside the machine's field ticked at slightly different rates than clocks outside. The differences were tiny, mere fractions of a second, but they were measurable and repeatable. Then, in 1996, something happened that changed everything. During one experiment, the machine began to glow with unusual intensity. The air in the laboratory started to vibrate. A shimmering ripple filled the room, as if light itself had turned to liquid. And then a man appeared. He materialized in the center of the laboratory, standing calmly as if he had simply walked through an invisible door. He spoke Russian, but with an oddly formal, old-fashioned tone. Everything about him seemed wrong somehow. He introduced himself as Yevgeny Gaiduchuk, and he claimed he came from the year 2029. At first, the researchers assumed it was an elaborate prank. Someone must have been testing them, mocking their time experiments with a theatrical performance. But Yevgeny knew things, technical concepts that hadn't been developed yet, scientific terminology that wouldn't exist for decades. He described resonance energy systems that powered entire cities, conscious computers capable of making decisions for humanity, bodies rejuvenated through nanotechnology, extending human lifespans by centuries. His clothing was even stranger than his words. A metallic, shimmering fabric that didn't respond to heat, moisture, or physical pressure. Laboratory analysis later revealed the material had no known chemical structure whatsoever. Yevgeny explained that in his own time, he was a scientist working on something called time projections, experiments designed to observe the past through focused energy fields. But during one such experiment, something went catastrophically wrong. The time field collapsed and pulled him through, depositing him directly into Chernobrov's laboratory. The researchers listened in astonishment. Yevgeny remained calm throughout, almost melancholic, as if he already knew what was about to happen. After several hours, he grew restless. He kept glancing at the still glowing machine and finally said words that sent chills through everyone present. "They will bring me back." Moments later, the machine flickered with blinding intensity. When the light faded, Yevgeny Gaiduchuk had vanished without a trace. Chernobrov spent the rest of his life trying to understand what happened that day. He theorized that time behaves like an energy field, capable of bending under specific conditions. Perhaps his experiment in 1996 and an experiment in 2299 briefly intersected, like two waves crossing in an ocean, creating a momentary bridge between centuries. Did this man really travel 300 years into his own past? Are connections between different eras actually possible? Now here's your chance to join the conversation. If you could send a message to someone in a different time period, past or future, who would you contact and what would you say? Drop your answer in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Number 6. The secret manipulation of timelines. What if the reality you're experiencing right now isn't the original version of history? What if someone, somewhere, has been altering the timeline itself? David Wilcock is an American author and researcher who has spent over 20 years investigating consciousness, quantum physics, and the possibility of time manipulation. His theories are controversial, but they raise questions that are impossible to ignore. Wilcock believes that time is not a fixed, unchangeable line. Instead, he describes it as a living network of possibilities that constantly reshapes itself based on events and decisions. And he claims that governments and military organizations have been secretly working to manipulate this network for decades. He points to historical experiments as evidence. The Philadelphia experiment of 1943, the Montauk Project that allegedly continued into the 1980s. According to Wilcock, these weren't isolated failures or hoaxes. They were the beginning of an ongoing effort to control the flow of time itself. But his most fascinating claim goes even further. Wilcock suggests that time has a kind of consciousness. Every action, every thought, every collective human emotion sends vibrations through the fabric of reality. When enough people experience the same energy, whether fear, hope, destruction, or peace, time itself responds by shifting direction. This would explain, he argues, why major events in human history seem to repeat in patterns. Wars, revolutions, great inventions, periods of collapse followed by rebirth. These aren't coincidences. They're echoes of previous cycles, reverberations through what Wilcock calls the cosmic rhythm of time. If this rhythm can be understood, he claims, then time can not only be traversed, but actually rewritten. According to Wilcock, secretive groups he calls timeline guardians have already done exactly this. They've intervened in history multiple times, preventing or delaying catastrophic events that would have changed humanity's course forever. Each intervention creates a new timeline, while the old one continues to exist, forever beyond our reach. Perhaps this explains certain phenomena that have puzzled people for generations. Déjà vu, inconsistent memories. The strange feeling that something in the world has changed, but you can't quite identify what. Wilcock calls this the time shadow effect. Tiny cracks in perception that occur when two realities briefly overlap. His ultimate theory connects Earth to a larger galactic cycle. He describes a 25,000-year procession during which our solar system passes through different energetic regions of the galaxy. Each region influences the structure of time differently. When humanity approaches the completion of one cycle, massive shifts occur in collective consciousness, and reality itself can transform. Are we living in an altered timeline right now? Have forces we don't understand been guiding human history from the shadows? Critics dismiss Wilcock's ideas as baseless speculation. Supporters call them the science of tomorrow. But regardless of where you stand, the questions he raises are deeply unsettling. Because if someone truly knows how to change timelines, then we have to ask ourselves a terrifying question. Are we living in the reality that was meant to exist, or in a version that was designed for us? And that was still relatively tame compared to what's coming next. Number 5. The man who lived in the year 2749. This is perhaps the most detailed account of future time travel ever recorded. And when you hear what this man describes, You'll understand why his story has captivated researchers for decades. Al Bielek claimed he was present during one of the most infamous experiments in military history, the Philadelphia experiment of 1943. According to official records, the experiment never happened. The United States Navy has repeatedly denied any involvement in attempts to make ships invisible or teleport matter. But Bielek insisted that not only did the experiment occur, he experienced its consequences firsthand. The Philadelphia experiment allegedly involved the USS Eldridge, a naval destroyer escort that was subjected to intense electromagnetic fields in an attempt to render it invisible to radar. Bielek claimed he was an officer aboard the ship when the experiment began. What happened next sounds like something from a nightmare. The ship was suddenly engulfed in a blinding field of energy. The air itself seemed to vibrate. Metal components began to heat and warp. Several crew members lost control of their bodies, unable to move or speak. Some reportedly became fused with the ship's structure itself. Their bodies merged with steel and wiring. Then everything went dark. When the light returned, the Eldridge was no longer in Philadelphia Harbor. It had appeared hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, before being pulled back to its original location. But the true horror was what had happened to the crew. Men were embedded in bulkheads. Others had simply vanished. Bielek and his brother Duncan made a desperate decision. They jumped overboard into the churning water below, and that's when their journey through time began. They didn't hit the ocean. Instead, they woke up in what Bielek described as a hospital room, unlike anything from 1943. The walls glowed with soft blue light. The beds floated slightly above the floor. There were no visible machines, no wires, no medical staff. A calm voice spoke from the walls themselves, monitoring their vital signs and guiding their recovery. They had arrived in the year 2021-37. Bielek described a world transformed beyond recognition. Coastal cities had been swallowed by risen seas. The climate was unstable and unpredictable, but humanity had survived by forming a global technological network, pooling resources across nations to prevent total collapse. Europe's borders had been completely redrawn. Traditional warfare had essentially ended. Conflicts were now settled through technological and economic competition rather than bloodshed. But Bielek's journey didn't end in 2137. He was shifted again, this time to an era so far in the future it almost defies comprehension. The year 2749. What he saw there sounds like a mixture of paradise and something entirely alien. Gigantic cities floated above the oceans, suspended by technologies he couldn't begin to understand. These structures housed millions of people living in complete harmony with nature. Plants grew along crystalline towers. Water flowed through elevated channels that wrapped around buildings like living rivers. There were no governments, no nations, no armies. A central artificial intelligence oversaw all major decisions. A consciousness network that had evolved far beyond anything resembling modern computers. This AI didn't control humanity. It guided and supported it, ensuring resources were distributed fairly and conflicts were resolved before they could escalate. Bielek described communication in this era as telepathic. People exchanged thoughts directly, without words or devices. Disease had been eliminated. Lifespans extended to centuries. The boundary between technology and biology had essentially disappeared. He claimed to have lived in this future world for nearly 2 years before being somehow returned to 1943, back into a body that had aged but carried memories of futures that hadn't happened yet. Al Bielek spent the rest of his life sharing his experiences through interviews and lectures. He never wavered in his accounts, never contradicted himself, and provided details so specific that researchers continue to debate them today. Was the Philadelphia experiment actually an attempt to open portals through time? Did Bielek really experience 2 different futures? Truly fascinating. And the next case takes us even further back in time than you could possibly imagine. Number 4. The Cairo Papyrus and the oldest evidence of time travel. Every case we've discussed so far comes from the modern era. But what if evidence of time travel exists from thousands of years ago? What if ancient civilizations encountered the same phenomena we're only now beginning to understand? The Cairo Papyrus was discovered in the early 20th century within the archives of the Egyptian Museum. Dating back approximately 3,400 years to the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose III, It contains a description that continues to baffle historians, archaeologists, and researchers to this day. The document describes events that by any modern standard should be completely impossible. According to the faded hieroglyphs, the pharaoh witnessed something extraordinary in the night sky. A circle of fire appeared above the city, hovering silently like nothing anyone had ever seen. From this object, beings descended. The papyrus describes them as men who were neither young nor old, who spoke like gods. These visitors were brought directly to the pharaoh's palace, and what happened next sounds remarkably similar to accounts we've heard from modern alleged time travelers. The beings led Thutmose into a chamber that did not belong to this world. There, the pharaoh experienced visions, images from other times, battles that hadn't happened yet, cities that didn't exist, faces he had never seen. And then comes the most puzzling passage in the entire document. The king saw himself, but not as a king. Instead, as a child who is yet to be born. For conventional historians, this sounds like religious mythology, perhaps a dream or a symbolic ritual. But for researchers who study anomalous phenomena, the description suggests something far more extraordinary. A time travel experience recorded over 3,000 years before the term would even exist. The papyrus also mentions that these visitors opened the order of time and led the pharaoh through gates of light. What if these gates were exactly what they sound like? Portals, passages between different moments in history. One particularly intriguing section describes a gift the sky beings gave to Thutmose, a luminous stone that holds time. This object was supposedly placed in a golden vessel and was said to pulse with the breath of life itself. Some researchers connect this description to the legendary Benben stone, an ancient Egyptian symbol of divine energy that was believed to have fallen from the heavens. What if that stone was actually a piece of advanced technology, a device that allowed the pharaoh to perceive different points in time? The visions Thutmose reportedly saw are startling in their specificity. Cities floating on water, people who carry fire in their hands. To ancient Egyptians, these descriptions would have made no sense. But to us, they sound remarkably like skyscrapers, airplanes, and electrical devices. The papyrus scroll ends abruptly. Its final line reads simply, "The men rose back into the sky," and the king remained silent about what he had seen. Many scholars believe the document originally contained more information, but that sections were deliberately removed, perhaps to protect knowledge that was considered too dangerous for ordinary people to possess. If the Cairo Papyrus truly describes what we would now call time travel, then it represents the oldest known account of such an experience. More than 3 millennia before science fiction, before Einstein, before anyone dreamed of wormholes or temporal mechanics, an Egyptian pharaoh may have glimpsed the future. Who were these mysterious visitors? Were they travelers from a distant future? Beings from another world? Or something we don't yet have words to describe? The questions remain unanswered, but the implications are staggering. Number 3. Chloe and the journey to the year 6000. This next case is so extraordinary that even seasoned researchers struggle to process it. A woman claims she traveled not centuries, but millennia into the future. And what she describes there will stay with you long after you finish hearing it. Chloe is an elderly woman from Finland. In footage that has circulated online, her face is pixelated to protect her identity, but her voice is clear and unwavering as she recounts her experience. According to Chloe, in 1966 she worked as an economist at Finland's National Science Laboratory. One day, without warning, she was selected for participation in a top-secret project. So secret that even most of the laboratory's own employees had no idea it existed. On August 3, 1966, she was led into a heavily secured room. In the center stood a strange chair equipped with straps, cables, and a helmet made of gleaming metal. Scientists instructed her to sit down. Her arms and legs were secured. The helmet was lowered onto her head. And then, she says, electric current began flowing through her body. Everything vibrated. Light turned white, and in the next instant, she was gone. When Chloe regained consciousness, she was lying in the middle of a street. The sun blazed overhead with unbearable intensity. The buildings around her looked nothing like anything she had ever seen. enormous structures that seemed to be made simultaneously of glass and living plants, organic architecture that breathed and moved. She had arrived in the year 6000. Earth still existed, but it had been transformed almost beyond recognition. Chloe described temperatures reaching 70 degrees Celsius. The sun had moved closer to the planet. Entire continents had been scorched. Oceans had dried up and reformed. But after this apocalyptic period, she said, Earth's balance slowly recovered. Humanity didn't just survive. It rebuilt itself into something entirely new. The civilization she encountered lived in floating structures suspended high above the surface. Nature and technology had merged completely. Plants grew through crystalline walls. Roots wrapped around metallic towers. The cities hummed with quiet, peaceful energy. But that wasn't the most shocking thing Chloe witnessed. Dinosaurs roamed the Earth again. According to her account, in the year 4529, scientists successfully resurrected dinosaurs using advanced genetic technologies. Initially, the creatures were kept in controlled environments, similar to modern zoos. But eventually, they were released into the wild. And by the year 6000, they dominated entire ecosystems. Chloe described one plant in particular that fascinated her. She called it Rollerulo. This plant was the primary food source for the resurrected dinosaurs, a sturdy, root-like species with leaves that shimmered like glass and fibers capable of storing energy. It was so abundant in the future that entire cities were illuminated by its natural glow. And here's where Chloe's story becomes even more remarkable. As proof of her journey, she displayed a strange object, a root-like substance that looked like a mixture of plastic and wood. She claims she secretly brought it back from the year 6000. Skeptics dismissed it as synthetic material, but under ultraviolet light, it reflected a faint greenish glow, as if it were biologically active. Is this actually a plant from 4,000 years in the future? Chloe's account includes other striking details. She claimed that beginning around the year 2300, humanity began implanting tiny recording chips into their eyes. These devices stored every memory and made crime essentially impossible. The world became more peaceful, she said, but privacy as a concept ceased to exist. She ended her testimony with a warning that still echoes online today. The sun will move closer to the Earth. There will be the greatest fire humanity has ever seen. And after that, everything starts again. Whether Chloe is telling the truth or spinning an elaborate fiction, her account raises questions that don't have easy answers. Did she actually witness the end and rebirth of human civilization? Subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. It's completely free and helps us continue creating these incredible investigations for you. Number 2. The warnings that saved a leader. This next case connects time travel to one of the most remarkable survival stories in political history, and the implications are genuinely unsettling. Fidel Castro led Cuba for nearly 5 decades. During that time, according to various intelligence estimates, there were more than 600 attempts on his life. The CIA tried poison, explosive devices, sniper attacks, even poisoned cigars designed to kill him during his famous smoking sessions. Not one of these attempts succeeded. Time after time, something would go wrong at the last moment. A phone call would interrupt the assassin. A car would turn unexpectedly down a different street. A meeting would be canceled seconds before a trap was sprung. The sheer statistical improbability of surviving so many attempts through pure luck has puzzled analysts for decades. Some researchers began asking a different question entirely. What if Castro wasn't just lucky? What if he was being warned? The theory that circulated in certain forums during the 1990s and 2000s suggested that Castro had access to information from the future itself, warnings that arrived just in time to save his life, delivered through channels that remain unknown to this day. According to these speculations, Castro's security detail began using surveillance technologies in the 1970s that seemed far beyond what was officially available at the time. Some believe these devices were based on principles that wouldn't be publicly understood for another 50 years. The connection some researchers draw is to the Montauk Project, an alleged continuation of the Philadelphia experiment that supposedly ran through the 1980s. According to various accounts, Montauk involved experiments with time windows, brief, unstable channels through which information, or even visual images, could be projected backward through time. If such technology existed, it could theoretically be used to send warnings to specific individuals, people deemed strategically important enough to protect across decades. Could Castro have somehow gained access to this information, either directly or through intermediaries who knew how to intercept temporal communications? The theory remains unproven. No official documents confirm any connection between Castro's survival and time travel research. But his record speaks for itself. Over 600 assassination attempts, 0 successes. Castro himself once joked about his seemingly impossible luck. If surviving assassination attempts were an Olympic sport, he said, I would have already won the gold medal. But what if it wasn't luck at all? What if someone, somewhere, was sending him warnings just seconds before it was too late? And now we arrive at the final case, the one that brings everything together. Number 1. The Time Traveler from the year 2048. This case is the most documented of all the stories we've shared today. It wasn't just witnessed by individuals or captured on private cameras. It was officially recorded by law enforcement and reported by major news outlets, including Newsweek, Fox News, ABC, and The Independent. In October 2017, a strange man walked into a police station in Casper, Wyoming. He appeared agitated, confused, and according to officers, noticeably intoxicated. But what he told them was so extraordinary that they documented every word. He claimed his name was Bryant Johnson, and he claimed he came from the year 2048. According to his statement, he had been sent back in time on an urgent mission. He needed to warn humanity about an alien invasion that would begin in 2018. He insisted on speaking with the president of the town immediately so that preparations could begin. The officers listened with growing disbelief as Johnson explained his situation. He said he had not traveled willingly. He had been caught in a time travel experiment and pulled backward through the years. But something had gone wrong during the transport. A miscalibration had sent him to the wrong year. He had meant to arrive in 2018 when the invasion would begin. Instead, he landed 1 year too early. When asked how time travel worked, Johnson replied that the process was extremely complicated and that not everyone survived it. His mission was simple but urgent: warn humanity, make them understand what was coming. He described the aliens as deceptive. They would appear peaceful at first, he said, making contact gradually, earning humanity's trust. But slowly, piece by piece, they would begin taking control. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late. According to the official police report, Johnson was heavily intoxicated during his statement. His blood alcohol level was well above the legal limit. The obvious conclusion is that he was simply a drunk man spinning an elaborate fantasy. But certain details have puzzled researchers ever since. Despite his intoxication, Johnson told his story with remarkable consistency. He never contradicted himself. He provided specific dates and details. He spoke like someone recalling actual memories rather than inventing fiction on the spot. He mentioned that time travel technology would only become possible starting in 2028. The program was initially developed by the United States government, he said, but was later perfected with guidance from what he called alien advisors. The police filed their report and released Johnson after he sobered up. The case might have ended there, forgotten as just another strange incident in small-town America. But then news outlets picked up the story. Newsweek reported it. Fox News covered it. ABC and The Independent ran their own articles. A simple drunk and disorderly case had become international news. Some theorists believe Johnson was exactly what he claimed to be: a time traveler whose transport malfunctioned and left him stranded in the wrong year. The fact that his predicted invasion didn't happen in 2018 doesn't necessarily disprove his story. If he came from a different timeline, a parallel branch of reality, then events might unfold differently in his world than in ours. Physics supports the theoretical possibility of such parallel timelines. When a decision or event changes the course of history, some models suggest that reality splits, creating multiple coexisting versions that are similar but not identical. If Bryant Johnson traveled from one such timeline into another, his warning about 2018 might be completely accurate for where he came from. even though our reality unfolded differently. Or perhaps he wasn't wrong at all. Perhaps the invasion he warned about simply hasn't happened yet. The question remains open. Was Bryant Johnson a madman spinning stories while drunk? Or was he a genuine messenger from the future who simply arrived at the wrong time to be believed? The official investigation found no explanation for his knowledge or his insistence. The case remains closed but unsolved. And so we reach the end of our journey through these 10 extraordinary accounts. People who vanished from one year and appeared in another without aging a day. Secret government programs experimenting with forces beyond our understanding. Ancient manuscripts describing events that shouldn't have been possible to witness. Surveillance footage that defies every logical explanation. Are these stories true? Are there really portals hidden in ordinary places, waiting to transport anyone unlucky enough to stumble through? Have governments been manipulating timelines while keeping the rest of us in the dark? We may never know for certain, but one thing is clear. There are things in this universe that we don't yet understand. Forces that operate beyond our current science. Possibilities that challenge everything we think we know about time, space, and reality itself. Which of these cases fascinated you the most? Do you believe any of them could be real? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We genuinely want to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel and give it a like. It costs you nothing and helps us continue investigating these incredible mysteries. Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and never stop looking for the truth. Because the truth, as they say, is out there. Or maybe it's out when.